Tonight's read aloud is Stonewall, a building, an uprising, a revolution, written by Rob Sanders, illustrated by Jamie Kristoff, published in 2019, the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising. Stonewall, published by Random House. Two stable houses side by side. For more than 100 years, we witnessed history. Then came a night when we became part of history. We were built in the 1840s to board the horses of the affluent in New York City's Greenwich Village. Inside our brick walls, horses whinnied and hammers clanged. Outside, passers-by bustled as carriages rumbled on the cobblestone streets. As time passed, the wealthy residents began to move uptown, taking with them their art clubs, libraries, fine hotels, and theaters. Our neighborhood became a mecca for immigrants arriving from all over the world. Visitors made their way to Greenwich Village. Many of them stayed. Greenwich Village was changing. We changed too. The smell of freshly baked bread began to waft through our windows and into the neighborhood. The roar of automobiles replaced the rumble of carriages as artists and writers moved in. Contemporary art galleries, experimental theaters, and small restaurants sprang up around us. The village was becoming the creative center of New York City. By 1930, our two buildings were joined together and we became Bonnie's Stonewall Restaurant. Celebrities, artisans, tourists, and local residents lunched at our tables, shoulder to shoulder. Greenwich Village was a place where you could be yourself and where being different was welcome and accepted. Newness thumped in the heart of Greenwich Village in the 1950s, vibrating our windows. Musicians played on the streets. Jazz filled the air. Poets performed in restaurants. Artists painted in their studios. The beat movement arrived, and we witnessed it all. Leading up to the 1960s, our neighborhood welcomed gays and lesbians, men who loved men, and women who loved women. We were a home for people who were told that they didn't fit in or belong. We had welcomed all kinds of people before, so we knew what to do. In 1967, we swung open our doors and became the Stonewall Inn. Gay men and women from throughout the city and the country came to meet old and new friends, free to be themselves inside our walls. Women and men, young and old, teenagers, transgender people, drag queens, veterans, business people, students, people of different colors, religions, and cultures gathered, chatted, laughed, and danced under one roof. Others were not as accepting. They thought those who gathered within our walls were too different. We heard the whispered voices of those inside. Loving someone like yourself was illegal. Socializing together could get you arrested. Wearing the wrong clothes could land you in jail. Being gay could get you fired or kicked out of your home. Some nights we heard fists pounding on our doors, felt angry footsteps stomping across our floor, and saw flashes of glaring light as the police arrested some of those inside. After each raid, those who hadn't been arrested left quickly, angrily disappearing into the darkness. We stood tall and kept opening our doors. People kept coming. But the police raids kept coming too. We couldn't stop them. In the steaming early morning hours of June 28th, 1969, under a nearly full moon, another raid began. "This is a raided premises. Police Department, City of New York." "Police!" a voice shouted. "We're taking the place." Officers stormed through our doors, lining up the people inside, demanding IDs, detaining some, and arresting others. This time, those not arrested didn't disappear into the night. Instead, they stood defiantly in the street and on the sidewalk under our rusty sign. This time, they weren't quiet. As the ones arrested were led to police cars and patrol wagons, the anger of the growing crowd was lit. "Why don't you do something?" yelled one woman as she was forced into a police car. Immediately, the spark of anger grew into a smoldering resistance. Shouts and screams echoed off bricks, fists thrust in the air. We saw the faces of the crowd and felt their rage. The Stonewall Uprising had begun. The police, shocked by the defiance of the crowd, rushed back in and barricaded themselves inside. Our friends stood outside, trying to force open our doors. Our windows were shattered. Smoke drifted through our rooms. We stood firm. Years of silent anger inflamed the crowds. The police called for help, and it soon arrived. The fires were extinguished. The police came back outside, but the crowd's anger was not extinguished. "Gay power!" the protesters shouted. "We want freedom!" The police had never seen anything like it before. Neither had we. And it wasn't over. The Stonewall Uprising continued on and off for several days and nights. A new day was dawning for the gay rights movement. The change had begun here inside our walls at the Stonewall Inn, now known as the LGBTQ+ rights movement. On June 28, 1970, our windows looked out on men and women gathering to celebrate the first anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising. At first, hundreds marched, then thousands of women and men, young and old, teenage, transgender people, drag queens, veterans, business people, students, people of different colors, religions, and cultures, and their friends and family joined the parade through the streets of New York City. "Say it clear, say it loud, gay is good, gay is proud," they chanted. Many things are different now. Some things have changed. Even some laws have changed. Now 2 men who love each other or 2 women who love each other can marry. We know. We've seen their happy faces snapping photos outside our door. We've heard their footsteps walking side by side along our floors. We've felt their love. Each year in June, people all over the world celebrate the movement for LGBTQ+ rights, a movement that has come so far, a movement that still has further to go. They celebrate inside and outside our walls. They celebrate freedom. They celebrate equality. It all began one night here at the Stonewall Inn, when 2 horse stables became part of history. Here's the history of the Stonewall Inn. You can pause the video and read through it on your own. Here's some pictures. Again, pause the video and you can read the captions. Here's an interview with Martin Boyce, Stonewall Uprising participant and LGBTQ+ activist. Again, pause the video and you can read his interview. Here's a glossary of some of the terms from this book, and websites and books and a podcast for further learning. People often asked what was special about that night. There was no one thing special about it. It was just everything coming together. One of those moments in history that if you were there, you knew this is it. This is what we've been waiting for. Craig Rodwell.